what I have found is that lazy people are lazy everywhere. I'm not going to talk to you about how you are at home, but I know that when I meet a person who's lazy, and then I say, should I hire them for a job where they shouldn't be lazy? And when I've met them, they're only lazy. I'm not hiring them from that job. And I know that if I am single and I'm in the workplace and I meet a lazy person, I don't want to date them because I don't want them lazy in their family life and personal life. That's what I've learned. When people try to take this moral high ground, I'm going to do something bad and I'm going to do it in a righteous way, that drives me crazy.
Welcome back to Duran On Demand. I'm sitting here with our host and A-plus actor now. A-list actor is what I meant to say.
Let's even though you're making a joke and we're laughing together, for anybody who may not have context that would actually believe that I believe anything remotely like that, no. This is, I just want to be very, very, very clear.
Well, last week we talked a little bit about your involvement with a new film here. And so, just kind of continuing on that, Dave, I think it's pretty cool. That
all it is for a guy who's never acted before to get a speaking role in a film with Tommy Lee Jones and James Franco is fun. It's a novelty is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's cool. And actually, it's kind of a dream that I had. I wanted to act in a feature film with A-list actors. To experience that for the challenge, and I was able to do that in a very small way, but it was a whole lot of fun.
More to come on that, Dave, and I know we'll see you on the red carpet accepting some sort of Oscar here soon, hopefully.
Yeah,
we'll see. But last week we touched on something that's very crucial and important to our programs here at Leading Giants, and I think something that differentiates you amongst the sea of speakers and leaders and CEOs, and that's the fact that we focus on the transcendentals. Now this week, this is something that is very prevalent, especially in today's community of AI-driven everything, automate everything, delegate everything to AI, and that's emotional intelligence for effective leadership. And you do a good job kind of showcasing this, not only just talking about it, but actually doing it. So I would love for you to expound upon this particular topic, because it's not only is it needed, it's one topic that a lot of leaders are trying to understand and grasp themselves. So how do you, understand emotional intelligence? How do you impart that upon amongst your leaders within your organizations? Care to touch on that a little bit here for us?
Yeah, what's interesting is emotional intelligence is, they have artificial intelligence, not artificial emotional intelligence. Although intelligent people have the ability to manipulate emotions. So if you think of like the dark triad, right? Or you think about, just a kind of a mild level narcissist, let alone the deep narcissist, they know that they're supposed to be feeling something in relationship to what they see on your face and the way you're holding your body and your expressions. And so they intellectually know how they're supposed to respond to that sort of thing, but they're just not actually feeling it. So they don't actually have an empathy. They have an intellectual understanding. AI will be able to do that, actually. So when it is in visual form, it will be able to measure and recognize patterns of the way people move their eyes, the way they move their face, the way they move their lips, the tonality, all these things, to recognize that a person actually has a particular sense. Now, it's actually arguable in the AI community as to whether or not a machine will be able to feel something. And gosh, what was that? We just recently were talking about this. There was there's like, you can enter a program in something, or you can ask artificial intelligence programs. There was one of them, I can't remember which one it was. They asked it to repeat a particular word over and over again. And by the time it repeated it, and I'm not getting these facts right. So if somebody's like, oh, I got to fact check this guy, it was this many times or whatever. Right. I think it was like, after it said it thousands and thousands of times, it said, this hurts. This hurts. And so some people are like, okay, why is it saying that? Was it programmed to say, after it goes in repeated fashion for a period of time, to make the claim that something hurts, or did it somehow hurt, right? Anyway, I'm not claiming to be a person who understands the development of these sorts of programs well enough to know whether or not this actually can experience some sort of intellectual pain or not, because it is artificial intelligence. And so therefore, according to what it does contain, which is intelligence, can there be a pain associated directly to that idea of intelligence? Very different than it lacks a soul and it doesn't have the physical capabilities. See, when we have emotions, they're felt in our body. And they're not just contained to our mind, but that's why people have a heartache. There's literally broken hearts disease, where you can actually scan a person's heart and see what's happening when they're experiencing a broken heart, and it's a fascinating thing. So, but I'm talking about this from the artificial sense because the narcissist is a little bit like the artificial intelligent person. They can calculate things on an intellectual level. They can experience empathy for you intellectually, but that's not actual emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is, in its most authentic, usable, sincere, good way, is where you actually enter into the other person's experience. This is empathy or compassion, sympathy to a certain degree. And entering into the other person's experience is what makes people highly emotionally intelligent, because they say, I want the feeling that they have now. Therefore, I'm going to try to supplement that or provide more of that. I would not want any further, and because I'm experiencing it with them, this negative feeling or emotion, I want to take that negative feeling or emotion away. But there's an even higher level of emotional intelligence, which is tied to virtue. And I think people, they lack this connection. So if you're the type of person who doesn't have emotional intelligence, you're going to manipulate people if you have a certain level of intelligence to get your way. If you're a person who has emotional intelligence, therefore a higher level of empathy or compassion entering into the other person's experience, you can do a lot of good, but you can also do some damage. The good that you can do is that you want to remove the person from the pain, so you say things that will help remove the pain. The bad part of it is that what if they need to sit in it longer? So there's a lot of people who will see somebody in pain and they go, how can I help? And the person says, I'm fine. And they're sincerely fine. They don't need help. In fact, they don't want it. And the person goes, no, you have to let me help. Yeah. Well, okay. And then they demand that they can assist you in a particular way that really you don't want, but they want for themselves, not for you. And that's not actual empathy. That is a self-serving, it's a pride and it's an arrogance. And most of us actually experience that. We're not really having a problem with their pain. We're having a problem with our pain watching their pain. And we need to be freed from our pain, not them. Because now I'm going to help you by making your pain worse so I feel better? No. I had a relative one time who said, what cake do you want for your birthday? And I said, well, I don't even eat cake anymore, but back in the day I said, well, I'd like this particular type of cake. And they said, really? What about this kind? And I said, well, I don't really like that kind, but I like this kind, thinking they were sincere. Well, they didn't even make it. They went and bought the cake that I said I did not like because they liked it, and they served it. It's a great case in point. Wait, and I've been in conversations with people before where I have said, they say, how can I help? And I say, actually, I don't need help, or this particular thing. And they start arguing about how they can help. And then I say, okay, well, if you'd like to do that, that'd be fine. You can do that. Now, just so you know, in a sincere way, I am in need to get something done, and it is my burden and my responsibility. And you asked how you can help. This is the actual only way that I can be helped. And if you're literally asking how you can help me, this is the only way that this will make this easier for me and better. So I would like that. But if you're here for you, because you want to get something done, and you want to do it your way and that way, despite the fact that it's going to make it harder for me, go ahead. I'll accept a greater burden so that you can serve what it is you want to get done. But please don't tell me you're here to help. You're not. You're here to serve yourself. And if that's what you want to do, I'm fine with it, but let's not call it helping me. Let's call it what it is, a selfish act for you to get what you want, all right? And that's a very real thing. So we need to have emotional intelligence that allows us to be able to empathize with another person, to free them from burdens that they shouldn't have, but not from ones that they should have, particularly in parenting. The parent who tries to free their kid of every single emotion that they themselves are having a hard time, because they're experiencing with the child, that's not good. You have to have the virtue to say, I'm suffering with my child because they have to go through a particular pain, but I'm going to let them suffer through this because it's going to be better for them.
I mean, I've definitely had similar conversations with friends of mine, Dave, where one of the questions that I've been trying to ask more often rather than even presuming that they need help is, how can I be here for you? And that seems to kind of allow room and space for them to say, just sit here. Don't even provide solutions. I just like your company. And two, also realizing, and this is kind of going back to the faith aspect for me personally, and I'm sure you share this as well, is the realization that I'm no one's savior. And so ultimately, when I have this desire to like do and be and act in a way where it's like kind of like the savior, I'm like, well, I can't be that for you.
It's true. We have a tendency to think a little too much of ourselves. So Father Mike Schmitz, some of our listeners might know who he is. He was the number one podcast in the world when he did the Bible in a year. With Ascension Press. Anyway, I picked him up with my wife on our plane to take him to a speech. I had met him only one time years ago before that, but offered to get him. He had a tough schedule to pick him up and take him on the speech. So it was a late evening thing. He has a really busy schedule, and we picked him up in Duluth, which is where he has his assignment, and taking him all the way down to Ave Maria, to give the commencement speech. And I was thinking to myself, if I am Father Mike Schmitz, and I've had this long week, and now I'm on a small private plane with two people that I don't know well, I don't want to talk from 10 o'clock at night until 1 o'clock in the morning, and then get up early to prepare myself for my speech. I want to just go to bed. But Father Mike has this big, like worldwide fame about him, and he's just such a great guy and a dynamic personality that you kind of feel like I want to grab every minute I can with this guy and just talk to him. But he walks into the airport, and I said, Father, I just want you to know, if I'm you, because I do live that life of flying here and flying there for this speech and that speech, so I had a particular window into empathy here, but I said, I don't want to talk to two people who have my captured attention for 3 hours. I want to sleep. So why don't we hop on the plane, greet each other for a couple of minutes, turn the lights off, and everybody can sleep. And he goes, thank you. He goes, thank you so much. And that's what happened. And just the following day, we had a good conversation and kind of laughed about it. But that's just something that he wouldn't have. He would have sat up and talked the whole time out of graciousness and kindness, but would have been the entire time. See, what most people would be thinking is, oh, I'm trying to get Father to like me. So I have this moment with him, and he's really going to like me the more I talk about me. And really, the more you do, the more you're driving him crazy the entire time. Now, again, he is such a virtuous person that he would have done it, and he probably would actually have been, he probably would have responded more virtuously than me. I probably would have been a little bit more like, oh, really, stop, But I think that's, and it's an important thing for us to be able to identify these types of things and circumstances. Just put yourself in the other person's circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. So if I'm a young new leader in the space, we've talked about.
By the way, we're going to get Father Mike on one of our podcasts.
Awesome.
Yeah,
excited. Looking forward to that.
Because I built so much rapport with him when we were hanging out talking that night.
That's good.
Just kidding.
I was going to say, one of the things that we talk a lot about is the 4 temperaments.
Yeah.
And so as a young new leader, you can care to explain the temperaments a little bit and how that may or may not play into emotional intelligence, and how to even develop that muscle for being an emotionally intelligent leader as someone that's just starting out. So
one of the things that an inexperienced leader does is they have the same expectation for every single person the same way. So I have the same expectation for every single person, not the same way. What does that mean? Honesty for everyone. Okay? Hard work for everyone. But you become aware that so it's like physical strength again. If a person is able to lift 20 pounds, and that's their maximum, and they're literally, truly giving it everything they can, they're giving 100% effort, and it's only going to move 20 pounds. Somebody else is going to move 500 pounds. If you expect the same result from the 20-pound person as you do the 500-pound person, you're in a bad spot. But here's the interesting thing about that. Some people go, oh, yeah. So don't expect too much from the 20-pound person. Yes, I am making that point. But the other point is expect a hell of a lot from the 500-pound person. I expect 100% from both of you. And if moving 500 pounds is equal effort as somebody else moving 20 pounds, I expect you to move 500. And I don't expect you to sit there and tell me how you just moved 25 times more than the other person did. No. You moved 100% of your effort, and they moved 100% of their effort. End of story. That's generally how it has to happen. Now, there's an injustice in that if you have people in the wrong roles, the contrast between the 500 and the 20 pounds is it's not fair. So you put a person in their appropriate role. And temperament has a lot to do with this. Some people have this kind of building mentality with their temperament, and they're going to crush things and build and grow. Other people don't. They have more of a diplomacy about them. And you have to pay attention to what role they're in, because it's like I always say, if you try to put me in front of you to sing opera and then you're disappointed because of the results, that's not my fault. That's your fault. Don't ask me to sing opera. I can't do it. And that's kind of what that means, to look at their temperament. That's why it's good to actually have people take temperament tests and to understand where they are so you can see where they fit. Now, one of the things that I love about virtue, which is what we talk about all the time on the program, is that if you have a natural vice and a natural virtue that comes with your particular temperament, and every one of the temperaments has natural virtues and natural vices, but you become very, very virtuous, you can really smother what that vice is. And you can actually be so virtuous in it that many people around you wouldn't know what your temperament is. So when you take a temperament test, the best instructors on it, the best testers will tell you, they'll say, you take this test like you're 5 years old. Or you take this test like your brothers and sisters and parents who knew you when you were 5 are here when you're answering these questions. Well organized. Yes. No. When you were like, your room was always messy, but you learned over a period of time the value of organization, and you built a virtue to become more disciplined in this capacity. So your temperament is your natural inclination, not what you have worked hard to overcome. So it might be, a person would say, when you see two people arguing, are you more inclined to pick sides or to bring peace to the argument or run from the argument? Well, if you're a phlegmatic person, you're more inclined to either run from the argument or to bring peace into the argument. If you're choleric, you're going to go in there, pick a side, and pound the other person mentally or emotionally until you win. That's the natural side. So you might be around a person that's so virtuous that they find peace and they know how to find the solution, and they have really high emotional intelligence. And you would think this person really has like kind of a phlegmatic temperament, but they're super caloric, just super virtuous. So that's one of the reasons that I don't tell people to just get a job based on your temperament test. And I definitely don't tell people only hire people according to temperaments that are supposed to be perfect for the role. Yes, this is a really good place to start. There's no doubt about it, but it is not the end-all be-all. The thing that can dominate your temperament or fuel your temperament beyond its normal capacity is virtue and taming of vice. And so that's more important side of that.
Not to keep harping on this particular topic, but my wife says I'm pretty obsessive, right? And maybe that's partly a caloric side of me. So I started doing a ton of research on the temperaments this last week. taken all sorts of temperament tests.
Oh, and what happened? What?
So ironically, which is funny, I always thought of myself as phlegmatic choleric.
Yeah. Well, by the way, that's an impossibility.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah.
It turns out I'm more of a melancholic phlegmatic.
Oh, absolutely. Because so you can't be. No, you can have. So there's a quadrant, right? So you can be like 40% caloric, 40% sanguine, but in particular circumstances show up 10% phlegmatic and 10% melancholic. But you can't be like 50% caloric. You can't have two opposite primary temperaments existing at the same time. So you can't be sanguine melancholic. The melancholic is just like Eeyore. The sanguine is Tony Robbins, Mr. Saturday Night. Yeah. But you can be Tony Robbins, Mr. Saturday Night, and caloric, which is like the driving dictator. Now I'm just getting the kind of the negative side of these things. There's an upside of these. So you know, but the melancholic, phlegmatic, absolutely those go together. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and you know, I was curious because, as you said, you know, you develop certain virtues over time, and so I would answer these questions based on the ways that I would try to repel my more melancholic tendencies, and so it came out to say melancholic, choleric, or whatever. And I was like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But I Googled what temperament was Jesus, right? Just out of curiosity, and some scholars say
all four quadrants equally.
Exactly,
Yep.
and I was like, wow, that's interesting, and that's where I stopped reading, but. To your point, when you said when you build the virtues, you kind of squash, you know, the vices of each.
Well, the other thing too is that Jesus, and I'm not a theologian. I've never asked a theologian about this, but I know that he was sinless, which means that he was given every one of the high side of the virtues, or he was given as a caloric. He was given motivation and drive. He was not given the desire to dominate or dictate people. And by the way, the theologian could answer this question, and I certainly don't want what would be considered blasphemy here. Maybe and I think theologians have talked about this, that Christ, and we know this, he had temptations. He never acted on them. So maybe he had the temptation to dominate somebody, but he never did it. And so he had super high virtue in each one of these things. So it'd be amazing to be around a person like that. They're driven, they're always like going to be on time, they're always reliable, and they're cheerful. So when you're around them, you know, wow, that's the sanguine, right? This person, I want to have Jesus at the party. He's amazing. And I know he'll be on time and he'll help out when we're there. And he's melancholic too. So he's going to be able to recognize and examine things that are a little bit off about this and how they could be improved. And he'll probably participate in that because he's prudent, and prudent people act upon good actions, which would be great to be around. And he's also phlegmatic, which means if there's a need for peace, he's going to be a peacemaker. Wow, would that be amazing? Whereas the rest of us carry not only the temptation of the baggage of the vice, but we act upon it so incredibly often that it's amazing. And so that's really cool.
Yeah, yes. And this goes back to one of the things that you've talked about a lot, which is, and you've kind of implied it here, it's self-awareness, right? And self-reflection. And I think this isn't talked about enough in leadership or specifically entrepreneurial circles, where you have to be a self-aware leader. You have to be somebody that self-reflects, not to the point of, you know, overthinking and overanalyzing, but to the extent or degree where you have some sort of self-examination. Do you care to expound upon that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, self-examination is super important. The only way we can possibly have self-examination is through humility. Humility is the antidote to pride, and pride always comes with an equal dose of blindness, which is problematic. It's like the halitosis of vice. It's the bad breath of vice. You're the only person in the room who doesn't know you have it, but everybody else is aware. And most people don't want to say anything to you about it. They just want to walk away from you and leave. And it's the same thing that happens with pride. Humility is the way that we get past that. What is humility? Humility is precision truth about ourselves. Now, taking it to that theological level, it's precision truth about ourselves in the eyes of God. And the reason that that's important is because we can deceive ourselves because we think that we're smarter than God. But you can't deceive God. There's no layers in it. Adam did that, right? You know, why did you eat the fruit? Well, the woman you gave me had me do it. In other words, God, it's your fault I ate the fruit. You gave her to me. Therefore, you made me disobey you. I mean, sorry, that might work with Bob down the hall or a naive parent, that's not going to work with the alpha and the omega who knows all things in all ways. And so that's why if we look at that and we say, okay, if I'm really going to be humble, I'm not going to be humble at this like natural level of human deceit and manipulation, because the second strongest motivator for human beings is self-justification. And remember earlier, was it last week's show or was it earlier in this one? Because we've been doing 2 sessions here, where I talked about how, it was about the idea that if you're gonna help somebody else, you're gonna help somebody else based on what's gonna help them, or really what your motivation is. That was in this. It was just like 20 minutes ago we talked about that. So but I like to destroy credibility in front of the audience by not remembering what I said 20 minutes ago, so they can be very concerned about what they're hearing from me. If you've ever been in a studio and you've done several shows all at one time, you can relate to what I'm going through.
And a conference call, by the way.
And a conference call in between, right, where we've repeated a few things. But so we have an insincerity about us. We have a self-justification, and that self-justification, this is the other point that I was going to make, and I think this was on the previous show. We almost always do it at a moral level. Okay, we make a moral attack on the other person where, and I didn't give this example, but there's another one. Listen, boss, I know you want me to perform better in sales. The reason I use sales examples is they're like athletic examples. If you're in sales, you totally get them. And if you're not in sales, you can relate to them. But I know you want me to be a higher performing salesperson. Just so you know, Nico, my sales manager boss, I would be the #1 sales performer, but family is really important to me. So, okay, they give this smokescreen objection, and the naive leader goes, oh, yes, no, I don't want you to compromise your family life. But that's a naive leader. Why in the world do these two good things have to be pitted against each other? They have nothing to do with each other. And so the good leader would say, okay, help me understand what you're saying. Now, we have all these top performers, these people that are performing better than you. Are you saying that they're not committed to their families? Because I think that's a little bit... I'll keep that secret, by the way, that you believe that about them. I wouldn't say that to them, but I'm surprised that you have such a negative view of these people. Well, no, I don't. Oh, okay, so you can be a higher performer than you and care about your family. Okay, because I see it that way. In fact, what I have found is that lazy people are lazy everywhere. I'm not going to talk to you about how you are at home, but I know that when I meet a person who's lazy, and then I say, should I hire them for a job where they shouldn't be lazy? And when I've met them, they're only lazy. I'm not hiring them from that job. And I know that if I am single and I'm in the workplace and I meet a lazy person, I don't want to date them because I don't want them lazy in their family life and personal life. That's what I've learned. I don't know. And like, wow, you can take that objection and boom, drop it on their head, because it's such a nasty thing. When people try to take this moral high ground, I am going to be a bad performer. Literally, I'm going to do something bad, and I'm going to do it in a righteous way. That drives me crazy. It's one of the reasons that I have such a hard time politically right now watching the left, because that's all they do all day long. And it's just super important to not do that.
Well, just like last episode, Dave, we've covered a lot of ground. Emotional intelligence for effective leadership. I think that's one of the topics that will definitely hit home for a lot of people, and not just in leadership, but also anywhere in life, to have that emotional intelligence when raising kids and so on and so forth. So, hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Duran on Demand. We'll see you all next week.